because of the ability they may have to give you the right kind of space to have that conversation in. Does that resonate with you? Just out of interest, how many people in the room have had a really amazing conversation at work about their career? Ever? Not a lot, is there? Who was it with, out of interest? Not the name, but the kind of person?
It was with my boss, who's a careers advisor.
Oh, right. Well, I'm pleased there's one that does the job properly. How many of you have had really important conversations outside work about your career? More? And how many of them, keep your hands up, up. How many, put your hands down if they weren't with family and friends? Now, you see, that's interesting. That is what we found, that actually there were fewer family and friends in here than we thought. That they were they are semi-professional. When you're talking about grown-ups, it'd be different with children, I suspect, but the people even outside work tended to be in people's work-related network, not just mates. There were fewer mates than we were expecting. I did a brief bit of work asking career coaches and career counsellors what they thought they talked about. It was very interesting in that they were losing their jobs so quickly, it was quite hard to interview them before they lost their jobs. And so it was quite difficult to conclude the research as I really wanted to. But that map covers a lot of the same territory. The bit that is more missing is the stuff about the labour market options and the choices that people have, which in that list is quite big. Options in the business and outside, so sometimes narrow, sometimes wide. The politics, the processes. This is more conventional, really. The top of the diagram is rather more about exploring yourself, and the bottom rather more about taking action. And there was a bit of a tendency for people who call themselves counsellors to be a bit more towards the top, and coaches a bit more towards the bottom, but it wasn't at all a black and white divide. The bit on the left is a bit more about work. Actually, I've got a laser. Let's see if I'll probably shine it in my own eye now. Oh, there, look. That stuff is a little bit more about jobs, and this stuff is a little bit more about skills and learning. And again, on the whole, people are rather more interested in that stuff. I think one of the difficulties for employers is if you see career development as a learning and development issue, you end up talking a lot to people about the training they need, but not so much about how they get themselves into the work they want to do. And I suspect that's true in education as well, that if we make it only a skills issue, it's not as relevant to people. So let's come back to career professionals then. We've looked at what people might want to talk about. This is a picture of, non-rhetorical question. It is a needle in a haystack. I'm a mathematician by background, so that means I'm allowed to play really fast and loose with numbers. So I had a go. Okay, chaps, how many career professionals are there in the UK? I couldn't find any reasonably. Anybody? 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000? Mathematicians can do this. We're only interested in how hugely big something is, not whether it's 1,003.
Less than there were, 40,000.
That's not a good enough question. 40,000, right. Do I hear more than 40,000? How many do we think we have? A lot less. The CDI on its website says it aspires to have 10,000 members. I didn't know what that meant. ADCAS has got 2,300 people on its mailing list. I don't know what that means. I reckoned by the time you'd taken out half of that, if you were generous and said there were 10,000, you probably got at least half of those people working with young people, haven't you? You know, you've got a lot working in schools and colleges and universities. So I played very fast and loose. I compared it with figures that are actually better, because they are on the web and they're properly collected, of around 30 million people in employment. Okay, so do the maths. How many people do we have one career guidance person for? very good at doing those sorts of sums, but I did do it on my calculator. It's about if you're generous, it's about 1 to 3,000. I've never met one in my normal life, have you? You know, if I didn't work in this field, I would never have met one. I have never met one in the workplace, other than under very particular circumstances. I'm going to talk about it in a minute. They don't hang about workplaces, they hang about other places. We know from Charles Jackson's recent survey that a lot of people who are career professionals also do other work as well. So, you know, that's, if you think about the hours of the week they do this for. So, you know, my best punt, but for goodness sake don't tweet this figure or film it or anything, because it's not at all a sensible figure, is that it may be there's one career professional for every 6,000 working adults by the time you've taken out the ones working with children. Ish. You know, it's certainly not 1 to 600,000, and it's nowhere near 1 to 60. That's what mathematicians do. We're only interested in orders of magnitude. Okay, how many managers in the UK? How many people would you have to look at work to find a manager? How many? 10. So, okay, you've got 1 in 10 chance of bumping into your manager. You've got a 1 in 300 chance of bumping into your HR function. So, on my needle in a haystack principle, there just are not many careers guidance people in the workplace. Full stop. I mean, you know, there just aren't. This is not a criticism. There just aren't. I do something regularly. I Google career guidance Lewis is my nearest town, or career coaching Lewis, or career counselling Lewis. How many people did I get on Sunday when I did my latest test? None. I got every kind of kooky therapist you could possibly imagine. Lewis is a town that has its own pound, so it's only, probably Totnes is the only weirder place in the country. I'll not tweet that one either. So it's not that there are not counsellors and therapists. There are thousands. But if you try and find a careers one, they offered me a life coach in Brighton and a career counsellor in Tunbridge Wells. That's quite a long way away. So, you know, they're not around. Okay. So, what's that a picture of? Needles. That is a haystack of needles. And my contention today is that's what we're living in. We're not really living in a haystack where we're trying to find a needle. We're living in a haystack of needles. All those needles are people who can help us with our careers, if we're smart enough. And if they're smart enough to know what they can do. And I just want to spend a bit of time rehearsing what that might look like. Doesn't mean they're all going to be wonderful career counsellors. But let's just look at some of the things that they bring, those needles in your haystack. And they're really different things. So some people might be able to help us because they know us very well. And certainly in the work I did on career conversations at work, there were certain conversations that were valuable because somebody was able to say, look, I've known you for 20 years. Are you sure that's really what you want to do? Or that's not what you've been saying to me for the last 6 months. These are not people who know about a whole lot of other things, but they know you and can help you think about whether you do mean that, or whether you mean something different, or whether you've changed, or whether you're changing, coming back to that deeper point about identity. Some people know what you're good at. Who knows what we're good at? Who's in the best position to see what we're good at? In work terms.
We are.
Sorry?
We are.
No, actually, people assess themselves very badly if you look at how they assess their skills. Some of us over-assess, some of us under-assess. So we like to think we're very good at it, but actually other people who watch us in relation to other people probably can see more clearly than we can see ourselves. As I think we like to think we're very good at knowing what we're good at, but I think sometimes it's easier for someone else to have a look as well. Now, I think that's one of the ones good managers are often quite good at. They may be rubbish at a lot of the rest of this stuff. But they're in a very good position to see us. So are peers, if we're able to have a good conversation with them. So are customers sometimes. Teachers can be. you know, if you're in a kind of that relationship with somebody. Sometimes young people, when people high up in businesses are asked why they like mentoring much younger people, they often say that the upward feedback they get from somebody of a different generation and much younger. So why do you do that? You know, why do we do it that way? What you're capable of is the really hard one. Understanding trends in business and opportunities, people working in sectors, people working in jobs are the people who understand what's happening there. Not even labour market economists, but people out in the world actually working at different things. People who are good at supporting others in making decisions. That's a different skill set again. People who can help you learn stuff, or find you other people who can help you learn stuff. And again, if you look at managers in business, they're not all great coaches. The best of them are quite good at helping you find somebody else who can help you, and their contacts may be better than yours. Politics is a huge thing in employment, politics with a small p. How you get around the system, how you understand who to talk to. Interestingly, HR people can be very helpful there. They often understand the politics very well if they're willing to cough up. They're also the people who know what jobs are coming up. They're often the ones who get early sight of actual opportunities. The trouble with managers is even if you escape them for the rest, it's quite hard to escape them here. They can be massive helps or hindrances. So even if you hate your manager, it's worth getting them on your side at some point. And last, I come to impartial. You guys, you'd probably put it first. The more I think about these things, the less clear I am that any of these people ever are impartial. And I've never seen more partial career advice than in the public service. The sorts of advice that people get in schools and colleges is no criticism of people that do that job. It's just politics is always telling them what choices are okay and not okay. It was incredibly clear and very sad, actually, in our biz study, the pressure that the people advising the unemployed in our sample were put onto to just get them into a job, any job. And that was, you know, that's not the fault of the people doing that job. That's the situation there, that's the reality they're in. And people saying over and over again, but I didn't just want to be put into a job. I wanted to think about the kind of job I really wanted to do. Have you seen Clutterbuck's new career conversations? This is fairly new. David Clutterbuck, mentoring. I think this is a really interesting list. It's another way of looking at the career conversation problem at work, and a nice, direct, sort of thought-provoking one. He says we need 4 conversations at work. The one we really have with ourselves, the inner, important one, where we choose very carefully who we talk to, because that's where we're really thinking. Then he has a second category, which I think is very nice, where you're talking to stakeholders. That is, they have a stake in you. And he tends to put the line manager in that category. That is not a neutral conversation, but they're a key stakeholder. I like the third one, which is about the relationship that organisation wants with its employees much more generally. This isn't an individual conversation. This is about, so what's on offer around here then? And what do we expect from you? And then the fourth one, of course, really important, how we're using our wider networks, both inside work and outside work. And I thought that was an interesting new way of framing some of this stuff. Less in terms of who we're talking to, but what are the different sorts of conversation we want to have. And I know I shall go on using that one, having found it. I think it's helpfully thought-provoking. Employers have had good goes at organising things in different ways. And I thought I'd just talk you through a few that they've tried, with varying success, to be fair, but just to show the range of ways that if you want to give a bit more career support at work, how you go about it. I should say that not many employers have used many of these things. But let's just have a little look at what some of them are. If we start over on the pink side, the left-hand side, my family are colourblind, so I never say anything's pink if I can possibly help it. The bit over here, oops, sorry, touched the wrong, this stuff. This is the sort of your manager, other managers around, and a lot of informal contacts at work. We've mentioned those already a fair bit, yeah? The reason I put the word community in that box for managers is that I think we make a mistake if we think that it's only that person's manager that can be a player here. Other managers are very important, and in fact in the study of effective career conversations we found that half of the good conversations were with managers, but only a fifth were with the boss. So a lot were with either the boss's boss or uncles and aunts, organisational uncles and aunts, other managers around you. And so some organisations are really injecting the extra career development skills into that pink population in different ways. If we then look at, where should we go next? Let's look at the top row. The intranet, there are some very good materials that employers can use. The track record of people using them persistently is not very strong. Career workshops, any of you know employers that run career workshops? It's a very cost-effective way of providing career support at work. It can be done within the normal learning and development activity. People like it, it gives them a social group to work with. And in terms of careers education, it's like careers education for grown-ups, really. It's both giving you the skills to manage your own career as well as looking at your career at a point in time. I think we should use them more. If we go along the top there, so if we look at the HR Service Centre, one of the funny things that's happened to HR is all the skill has been peeled out. We've got small numbers of specialists left who are down here, and then we've got people in call centres. Some organisations are thinking about, well, who in HR can provide a bit of extra support? And although they always have an extra grind in different ways, a lot of HR people have quite a lot of the skills. Increasingly, they're training as coaches and counsellors. So if you think of the career skill set, they're often quite well placed. All sorts of interesting things about the role. A few organisations have set up specialist internal career services here. I've been looking recently again at the one in the Ministry of Defence. It has very small numbers of employees, I think only about 4 full-time equivalents. But they have advised thousands of MOD employees, face-to-face or by telephone. They were selected from the workforce and then trained in career guidance. And that is their main job. That's a very unusual one. Another interesting one is this one, which we would see in Oxfordshire County Council, for example, where employees who are interested in doing so are offered training as career coaches, in their case is the term they would use. And it is part of their job to offer advice to others who they do not have a work relationship with. So in their model, you can't do that if you're that person's manager. You would go to someone else. Skill and cunning in that one is that you can't sack them very easily because they're normal workers as well. One of the problems with a dedicated resource in a company is it's terribly vulnerable to cuts. And I've seen so many businesses put a specialist service in and then get rid of it again, and they come and go. I think the volunteer model is a very interesting one. I haven't mentioned external, and things like professional bodies can be very important to people. Other trade unions, there are many other organisations in their lives. So those are just some of the models, and I only put that up not to say that lots of employers are doing all this, because I don't think that's really true. But it's not that people haven't got models of how this could work and how different kinds of people can be corralled. And that it's not that difficult to get some capability within an organisation. Obviously much easier within a large organisation than in a very small one. But some are really kooky. The Foreign Office trains ambassadors in all sorts of bizarre things, including NLP techniques. And so their very best career counsellors are ambassadors, and I assume you get Ferrero Rocher chocolates. That would be a treat indeed. So just to sort of come full circle then, where have we been? I think that was a proper question. Thank you. Just to wrap up, I think we are at such an exciting time when employers, more than for at least 20 years, do think that career issues are quite important. It's taken them a hell of a long time to get back to saying that. We know quite a lot, really, about the kinds of things that people may want. We know that's quite diverse. We know there are all those needles in that haystack that could be offering different bits of the jigsaw. And we know that there are quite well-tried models of how you set up something that's a little more systematic and a bit less hit and miss. So if I come back to my original question, that's just what I've talked you through. It probably is a tiny profession. We don't even know how big it is, as I showed you. But it seems to me, particularly with the creation of the new institute, it's at a moment when it could be much more influential than it's been for quite a long time. That people for whom a set of career guidance skills is one of their main working identities are well poised, really, to not ever be huge, perhaps, but to be much more influential in that map of what happens to adults. Is it everyone's business? Well, I think absolutely. I think my